I'm Sarah. I'm 34 years old. I'm a MyLab.
In Basis 10, we bring the connection between shadow beings, mind control, alleged US and UK military, the Greys, child abuse, and ceremonial psychic programming in one simple package: Sarah Stanger, who claims to have seen James Casbolt while a child at one of these rituals. The following material requires parental guidance. It is shocking and simply terrible, if true. And until we have evidence, we must consider this as spoken testimony, and that's all. The blogs of Sarah Stanger.
Okay, this is a little bit of a test run. Just want to see how this records, really, before I start recording myself and sending these as video diaries, amongst other things, to people. Just want to see how this turns out. I'm Sarah. I'm 34 years old. I'm a MyLab abductee, mind control victim, and I'm still under mind control. I'm still being abducted. I'm still being abused. I'm not 100% sure how to stop it. I've been trying to contact people for about 2 years to get some help that I need for what's happening to me and to rectify the situation, or start healing, or stop deprogramming me, or however you wish to, however you wish to portray it, call it. I'm hoping that somebody will look at these and be able to help, be able to, or be able to put me in the direction of somebody who might be able to help me, somebody who might be able to take me seriously, and I'm part of me is exhausted. I've been looking for help and looking for people to help me and to take me seriously over my story for 8-9 years, and I've actually been suffering from gang stalking and abductions and very, very strange and intense paranormal activity since childhood, and a lot of the things that have happened to me are very satanic, very, very abusive, and I really just need some help.
Welcome to Basis 10, Sarah. What kind of experiences bring us to Basis 10? You're in the Basis series because of people like James Casbolt, those kind of experiences.
Mm-hmm.
So tell us more.
Where do you want me to start?
When did you first have your experiences, and
What consciously, or
when did you first realise things were not quite the same as everybody else?
when I was about 19? Which is about 16 years ago now. I was about 19 years old, and all I knew was that my life kept running into quite a lot of bad luck at that time. I wasn't really entirely sure what was happening. I was actually in a women's refuge at the time, and working part-time, and I met a chap who, I just met him through some friends from work, and he ended up being into the Kabbalah and into the occult, and we'd been dating for a while, and I started having some very, very strange experiences when I was around him, basically, which I kept kind of...
What do you mean by strange?
I always felt like I was being watched, even when there was nobody else around. I always felt like there was... I just always had a sensation of being watched, and people would come round to the flat where my boyfriend lived, and they would find their hair being flicked, or their ears being flicked, or they find themselves being pushed off the sofa.
By invisible
entities? By invisible entities. I remember on one occasion, on his living room door, there was a big long 4-foot mirror that was on the back of the door, and I remember seeing an entity come through the door, which really, really kind of shocked me.
What did it look like?
It was just like a grey mist. It was a humanoid figure, but it was just like a grey mist. And, but that you know when somebody walks past on a camera shot too quickly and they're just a bit blurred, that kind of mist. It was like that, and I remember being really shocked. And it was only about 4 foot tall. I started having some quite strange experiences that at the time didn't really add up. Now, later on, kind of in context of everything else that's happened, it kind of makes sense. But back then it really didn't make sense. Like, there were a few occasions where I was asked to go to sleep on my own in my boyfriend's flat, in his bedroom on my own, and he would just say, "Oh, I just need to spend time sleeping on my own. I'll sleep on the couch, and you go to the bed on your own." And I remember thinking at the time that it was a bit peculiar and a bit of an odd request, and if he wanted some time alone, why didn't he just send me home on my own? And I went to sleep feeling really, really uneasy, and just said a load of prayers and just went to bed and thought nothing of it. And then woke up at some time in the morning, it must have been about 2 o'clock in the morning, feeling beings around the bed. And I wasn't really sure what was going on, and I wasn't really sure if it was in my own head or not. And I thought that I was probably just imagining things. And then I had the most bizarre dream, just really completely bizarre. It was very, very lucid, so it felt very, very real. Where I woke up in this room, it was completely pitch black. I was on an altar table, which was also pitch black. And I'm in altar robes. I'm in female robes, a long dress, which on the left-hand side is red, and on the right-hand side is white. So it's kind of like vertical red and white. And I'm laying down on this table, and there's a man with short blonde hair on one side of me. There's a woman with long blonde hair on the left-hand side of me. And there's a priest with a long dark beard and long dark hair, and he's wearing white robes, and he's got some kind of white hat on, and he's standing at the foot of the bed by my feet. And in this dream, I'm pregnant. I have a huge bump, and I'm pinned down to the bed so that I can't move, and I'm screaming, and I'm really, really crying, and I'm giving birth, basically. And I end up giving birth to what looked to my mind at that time as 2 demons, and they're about this big, and they're blue. They represent something that looks like a dinosaur. And I'm screaming, and I'm in absolute terror and in absolute shock. And I wonder how the hell that came out of me without causing me some severe damage inside my private parts. And I don't understand what's going on. The man and the woman on either side of me are trying to soothe me and calm me down. And I'm just in shock. And I'm told that these are my children. That they come from me, and they hold them up to me, and they say, "But we're going to take them away now, they're not yours. We're going to take them away, but these are your children, and you will always be known as their mother, and we want you to know this." And I wake up, and I'm sat up bolt right in bed, and it's pitch black, and I'm kind of thinking, what the hell happened there? What was all that about? And I can still feel entities in the room. There's still beings in the room. And I'm just shaking, and I'm really, really scared. And I run out the bedroom, and I go and grab my boyfriend, and I'm shaking him on the sofa going, I've just had this really, really weird dream, and I can feel beings in the room, and something really weird's going on. And he's just sat there going, yeah, I know. Somebody came up to me and started doing this in front of my face and slapping me around the face in my sleep. And really kind of being cheeky and kind of, having a bit more than just a bit of a laugh. And I was like, what is going on? I just really, really didn't, I had no conscious memory of anything else happening like that to me in my life. So I had nothing to compare it with. It was just very frightening, very shocking, really. And there were quite a few incidents that occurred like that at his flat, basically.
What about him?
Well,
What's the history of him?
his history.
Is this a German guy?
No, he's not the German guy. He's a guy from. I think originally he's from Lincolnshire, but he moved to Leicestershire with his parents when he was still a young boy, and I just met him through friends of friends, through work friends, really, at a Christmas party, and he was a musician in a local rock band, and you know, I didn't really know anything about his background. I didn't even know he was into magic until several weeks into dating him. Really, I had no idea he was into.
Why didn't you just leave him? What kept you with him?
I don't know. He was quite controlling and abusive, so I don't know really what kept me with him at all, to be honest. I think I just, after being in a women's refuge and being homeless in that kind of position, I think I just needed to be loved, to be honest. I was just desperate for somebody to love me and to need to be needed. And I think that's what kept me with him for roughly about a year and a half. But,
it's a long time.
Yeah, it is a long time.
I have been in contact with Draco beings, not by choice, for about 2 years now. But I believe that they have been in and out of my life since childhood, and I have been shown that they have been involved in a lot of the MITLAB and abduction scenarios that I've been in this life. I have actually, over the past year and a half to 2 years, had conversations with them, which I've written down and kept a log of. These beings are unbelievable. Really quite unbelievable. They're very arrogant. They believe that they are God. They believe that they are the embodiment of God, and that they are the embodiment of God's will and God's justice. And therefore they can't do anything wrong, because they are God. I'm not God. You're not God. They're God. That's pretty much it. They believe that we are here to serve them. We are here to serve God. Not to be God. To serve God. And they are God. They believe that I am theirs, that they own me. I am their property. I don't belong to the universe. I don't belong to me. I don't belong to the Creator. I belong to Draco. I am Draco property, apparently. And if I believe anything else, then I will suffer and I will be made to be punished. Which is really nice of them. It's really great. I have been working with a therapist who has found that I do have Draco entity attachments. And under hypnotic regression with this particular therapist, it was found that some of these entities were deliberately placed into my meridians and chakras by a witch who masked himself as a healer. And basically, instead of healing me, he tried disconnecting my Merkaba, and he also hooked these Draco entities into my meridians and my chakras by placing dark energy thorns in the energy channels of my body, which I have had great trouble removing. I still have these Draco entity attachments though, even though I've been doing the work to remove all this other energy work from my bodies. This particular witch I believe to be... It's going to sound crap, people are going to accuse me of being paranoid, but I believe he's an Illuminati witch. I believe he was sent on a search and destroy mission. It was about the same time that I knew this witch that I had an attempt made in my life in a hit and run accident with a car. The car that hit me was a black Porsche. I waited for half an hour for an ambulance. An ambulance finally arrived. A car arrived at the scene, a beige Subaru, who claimed to be the car to have hit me and sped off, and said that he came back to the scene because his wife had had a go at him, and that it was against the law to hit and run, and he should have taken care of the person that he hit, and could he go back to the scene. I personally believe that they sent somebody in a beige Subaru to see if I was dead, basically, to see how much damage had been done. I don't think it was for any other reason, and I know it was a black Porsche that hit me. It was a black, small sports car. It was going very fast. Subarus make a hell of a lot of noise. They make a huge noise. They've got very noisy engines, and everybody's eyes can tell the difference between a beige and a black car, so that was just rubbish.
I did eventually get my own house, and even when I had my own little 2-bedroom terrace house, just in the city centre, a lot of weird, bizarre things kept happening. I kept seeing a shadow man that would appear.
What about the shadow man?
He would always appear stood inside a cupboard that was built into the wall in my bedroom, and he would always have some kind of long coat or cape on, and some kind of hat, and he would always be kind of grimacing or glaring. And
so
again,
he was humanoid,
he was humanoid.
What details? What do you mean by shadow?
He was just dark. He was just very, very dark. He was just very, very dark, and just a shadowy character, a shadowy figure, and that's the only way that I can really describe it.
Could you see through him?
Yeah, he was see-through.
Was this in broad daylight?
Yeah, it was in broad daylight. I remember a witch who was a friend of my boyfriend's coming round to my house because I said there's something weird going on, and at that time I felt like I was being taken away somewhere, and I wanted to know what was going on, and I didn't know why I was having those thoughts or feelings. And this witch came round, and she kind of investigated the house and said, "You are being visited by beings," and she said that there is a man that is standing in that cupboard, and I hadn't told her about the man in the cupboard at all. And I'd been having some really quite disturbing dreams.
What about the cupboard?
I don't know what was going on with the cupboard, apart from just seeing that shadowy man, that shadowy figure in there. But I had other dreams as well where I was, again, in this, either in the same dark altar room, or I would be in a place that looked like a small community centre theatre, just kind of.
Can we concentrate on the altar? Where was it? Can you feel the location, or what was it made from? Was it in some church somewhere?
I'm trying to look at it now in my head, and I can see a yellow brick, yellowish brick building, and I could probably even draw down some of the brick detailing from the top near the roof. It's kind of very, very typical Greek kind of pattern that kind of curls over itself over and over again. But that's all I can see, really. I can't.
The Greek church?
I don't think it's a church. I just think it's some big. It's a big building, but I don't think it's a church.
Were there other entities there? Other people? What were they wearing?
Human beings, and they all had long, dark cloaks on. And quite often I remember having dreams of them asking me to join them, and I would always be very, very apprehensive about doing so.
Why? What made you apprehensive?
Just something to do with the atmosphere and the situation. And I remember on one occasion they asked me again, "Will you join us?" And I remember in just turning around and saying, I don't know, they turned around and said, "It'll be okay, it's okay, there's nothing evil, there's nothing wrong with this." And I kind of almost agree, and then something in me says no. And then I end up running out of the side door of the building.
Can you see what kind of building it is? Is it a skyscraper, 2-story, 3-story, brick?
It's a museum. It's a museum in a city centre. And I run out of the fire door of this building, and I run up a pedestrianised area, and I'm barefoot, and I can actually feel the pavement beneath my feet. It's really cold and it's slightly damp because it's been raining at some point. And I just hear someone go, get her, don't let her get away, get her now. And I just absolutely leg it. I'm running as fast as I can up this pedestrianised area, and I think to hide behind some bushes that are round by the outside of a church. And the next thing I know, there's police cars everywhere, and the police come and basically take me out from behind this bush, and you know.
What kind of cars were the police driving?
They were, you know, the old-fashioned, what they used to call
The
jam sandwich cars.
Yeah, the Rover type, or
I couldn't tell you. I know
the red stripe down the middle.
Red stripe down the middle, but they were like estate. They were estate cars. Maybe like something that you'd get from one of the
4-door.
like an old Ford, yeah.
A 4-door. That's 4-door.
Oh, 4-door, yeah, 4-door car,
Yeah.
yeah. But
So was this type of car which was around in your contemporary life at that time?
in the 90s? Yeah, it would have been around in the 90s. It would have been around in the 90s.
So did the police help you, or did the police actually bring you back to them?
I have no idea. I've not actually explored that particular memory any further, but it's that memory or dream.
So what was happening on the altar? What made you want to run away?
There was a man there with he was an older man, and he had blonde hair, and he had to kneel down before this altar, and I was expected to do something to him that I basically it was against my core beliefs to be able to do, I think.
You must have had some kind of oral sex act or something like that.
At this particular junction, no, I was expected to punish him in some way. I was expected to do something quite violent, and I didn't want to do it, basically, and something in me just kind of went no, and I just.
So do you think that the man was some guys? Was he part of the ceremony? Was it a ceremony, or was he a victim? Was he like a prisoner?
I think it was part of a ceremony. I don't think he was necessarily a victim. Compared to some of the other memories that I've recovered later on over the years, I definitely don't think he was a victim. I think he was part of things. I think it was part of some rite that he had to go through, or some rite that I had to go through.
So does this bring you forward to another memory that you can describe?
The other memories that immediately come to mind are of being in again in a dark room, and the altar's black, but it's been outlined in red for some reason, just on the corners and along the edges.
Can you describe the details?
Yeah, there's some kind of platform or small stage behind, which has 3 steps, and that's black, and it's kind of semicircular. And there's as you're looking ahead of it, there's a door that would be on the right hand side of it as you're looking at it, and there's a brick wall that kind of like comes out like this, and then another door here facing you from the left.
Have you been able to draw that anywhere?
I haven't actually got round to drawing any of these things as yet. But yeah, so, I can draw them. That's not a problem. So
what happened with that particular altar? What was the reason why you felt you could remember that better?
That was a memory that came to me that I've basically gone over a few times in it and explored, just to see what happened really. And there is a cage in that room. It's a cage big enough to hold a dog, basically a live animal of some kind, and there's a young blonde boy in it. There's a young blonde boy in there.
What age, roughly?
He must be no more than about 6 years old. And in this.
What condition is the boy?
What condition? He's petrified. He's absolutely petrified, and he just wants to go home.
So how did you get to that stage where there's with a cage?
With the cage? How do you mean? How?
What led you to seeing the cage?
To seeing the cage.
Circumstances?
It was just part of it. It was just part of the memory. Basically, it's part of what I remembered at that time. I think I'm roughly about 12 years old in this particular memory, because I have a fringe And I know at the age of 12 I had a fringe and long straight hair down to just past shoulder length. And I'm naked most of the time in this particular memory. There's red drapes as well by either side of the stage, the platform area, and they've got the little boy in this cage, and he's being treated really badly by 3 of the men in the room, although there's a woman in the room as well with glasses and blonde hair, and the men are all laughing. Basically, they're all kind of chuckling to themselves, and I'm being told what a precious little girl I am, and what a sweet little thing I am, and what a special little girl I am, and I'm just, I think I'm numb. I think I'm just emotionally numb throughout the whole thing, actually. I think I've just already started dissociating and just kind of, I've just got to get on with this somehow, and I've just got to think about something else and just put up with it. But this is one of the memories that really started, I think, a lot of my anxiety and PTSD, because that's one of the memories that contains quite violent sexual abuse, and the taking of blood, basically, from myself.
I just wanted to add a little bit more about what had happened during my time in Leeds, living there with my ex-partner in Chapel Allerton. Before some of the interdimensional occurrences took place in that house in Chapel Allerton, whilst I was working in paediatric haematology and oncology, I remember my partner's brother's girlfriend inviting me for a drink after work in a Wetherspoons pub in Leeds city centre. I went and met her there, and one of the consultants from paediatrics was also there, who was well known to myself and to my partner's brother's girlfriend. She'd also at points had work to do with the NHS before working for Johnson & Johnson as a bioengineer. Anyway, I remember walking into this pub to go and meet her for a drink after work. And as I walked into this bar, there was a man that I had not seen for many, many years. A man who I met when I was 19 years old. When I knew him, he was a Kabbalist. He was heavily into the occult. He had a lot of friends who were witches. I was a very, very naive 19-year-old girl who was I was homeless, basically, at 19. I was still doing a lot of drugs. I was into Buddhism, but when it came to the occult, I didn't really have a clue, and I wasn't really into it, to be honest. I think friends in the past had tried getting me to kind of like get into Wicca or what have you, and asking me, oh, if you read this book, it looks really, really cool, and I was just never into it. Wicca never really floated my boat. I actually had an instinctive reaction against Wicca, and just kind of like was always no. I don't know if that's because of my Christian background or not. I think it's actually a lot to do with my mother and her kind of influence over me over the years, telling me to keep away from all such things. I'll come back to that part on my mother in another post, actually, because that's quite interesting on future piece. Anyway, this man I haven't seen since I was 21 years old, and I'm at this point 26 years old. I've been living in Leeds for at least 6 months, and I walk into this pub, and he's standing there near the bar with a man with black rather than dark brown, curly, wavy, long hair and a beard. And the man with the long, dark hair and the beard had a black leather jacket on, that I do remember, and he was standing next door to this ex-boyfriend of mine who used to be a Kabbalist. Anyhow, as I walk in, we clock eyes on each other, and he seems to be just as shocked as I am. Like, he wasn't expecting to see me. And for some bizarre reason, the thought came into my head, you no longer have power over me anymore. And I just kind of turned my head, kind of like this, and sauntered off, and thought no more of it, and just smiled to myself, thinking, I've got everything I need in my life. I've got a great job. I'm going to carry on with my higher education soon. I'm going to be going off and studying, even if I wasn't going to be studying at Manchester, because I'd applied to go to Leeds Uni instead, to fit in with my then partner's plans. And so as far as I was concerned, like, life was hunky-dory. I wasn't really paying attention to the gang stalking because I didn't know that it was gang stalking, and I just thought I was mentally ill, and I thought that as long as I stayed away from drugs and had a good diet, did meditation and yoga, that I'd basically heal and fix my brain, and it was my own fault for doing too many drugs anyway. I really, really didn't have a clue otherwise. I really was convinced that the gang stalking was just a symptom of my mental ill health. Anyway, I walked up the stairs to the gallery in this bar and sat there with this paediatrician and had quite a long chat with him, and chatted to my partner's brother's girlfriend. Sat there, had a drink, and just kind of hung out with everybody, really. And I noticed that these two guys near the front, basically the one with the dark hair turned round to my ex-boyfriend, the Kabbalist, and said, "She still blames you then." I heard them say it, and then I just kind of turned around and I just thought, what? Yeah, I'll get out of town then. I didn't realise that basically they read my mind. They were, when I kind of had that in my head, you no longer have power over me anymore, I didn't say it out loud, it was just in my head, and I kind of got the impression that they'd been reading my mind, and at the same time I didn't really want to acknowledge that either, so I just kind of like thought, oh, just ignore it, Sarah, just don't worry about it. Anyway, next thing I know, I mean, this bar is completely crowded. It's ram-packed full of people. It's a Friday night. So people are either in this bar for a quick, swift half after work, or they're there for the long haul for a long night out, slowly getting toned up. It's about 6:30 in the afternoon. Well, 6:30 in the evening, sorry, not afternoon. Leeds city centre gets incredibly busy on a Friday night, I can assure you. This bar was rammed. And in order to walk out from where these men were standing would have taken them quite a good few minutes. And there would have been noticeable jostling of people moving around from side to side whilst they were trying to negotiate and navigate their way out. For the instance that I turned around and just thought, oh, fuck, no, it's just in your head, Sarah, forget it. And then turned around to look again, they had disappeared, just like that.
Can you go there? Can you describe it?
I'm basically tied down to the altar, and these men just take it in turns to do what they want to me, these three men. And the woman's there with a camera, she's videotaping it all. And there's they drain me of blood from my left arm, and the little boy in the cage is actually handed some of this blood, and he does drink it, and he starts acting very, very odd, very, very hyperactive, and he's kind of bouncing around everywhere. And because he's acting so odd and so peculiarly, these men and this woman, they just start laughing about it. They think it's absolutely hilarious. And I'm just exhausted at that point.
Can you get any further information, detail on the men?
What
were they wearing? What did their faces look like?
There's one with short blonde hair, spiky hair. He's got glasses. He's got quite a structured jawline, quite a, what they call it, I think a square jawline. They're all wearing, well, the men are wearing black. Pretty much. The woman is
black robe, black.
Just black top, black trousers. There's no robes involved in this particular memory, and the woman from what I remember, is just wearing a white dress. And
What kind of dress?
Just a white kind of like summery cotton frilled dress.
There's no regalia anywhere.
Not in this particular memory, no. Not in that memory. There's not, no.
How long did this go on for?
That particular incident, it went on for about 40 minutes, from what I can gather.
So, can you remember how you got there and how you were returned?
Yeah, I was taken by a woman who was called my mother, but she's not my genetic mother. She's a woman with long, dark, curly hair. She takes me in a car to a big manor house in the countryside, basically, and it's a house that I've had quite a few memories of, where I'm normally taken into a big foyer there. There's a very plush red carpet.
What kind of car?
What kind of car? It's just some kind of either white or light beige car.
And they collect you from home?
Do you know, I've not gone that far back into the memory, but I do know from what I remembered that she picked me up in this car from somewhere, and basically took me to this manor house in the middle of the countryside.
Can you describe anything about the manor house, any of the village or the roads that you went down?
For some strange reason,
Did you see any signposts? Can you remember anything?
the main thing that I remember is that I get the sense it was in North Leicestershire, somewhere around Loughborough. It feels somewhere similar to Bow Manor Hall, basically, which is
what's Bow Manor Hall?
Bow Manor Hall is actually just a local kind of manor house that's open north of Loughborough. Actually, it's I think it's just north of Loughborough, in Leicestershire, and it's a very, very popular place, and they hold fairs and all sorts there all the time. It's one of these places that's open to the public, and it just feels like it feels somewhere similar to Bow Manor.
So it's not that place, but it looks like it.
I'm not 100% sure. It's kind of part of me wants to say and scream it is Bow Manor Hall, but at the same time I'm just I suppose on that I really, really need to make sure that it is. But that's what it feels like. It feels like that place. And
what made you special for these people? What was your function?
What was my function? I think there's a few different ways of describing this. I don't believe I'm the only person in my family to kind of suffered basically in this way.
So how many are there in your family? Can you just go into your family details?
I know that my mum suffered some kind of sexual abuse and trauma when she was a child as well, and I know that my grandmother did as well. And like me, both my mother and my grandmother have had some kind of experiences of being abducted by UFOs, and have also both at times seen, the shadow beings, the shadows just that kind of flicker past.
What would you call a shadow being that would flick past? How would you describe that? How do you see them?
The memories I have of them as a child are of just seeing this kind of like dark flash going past out the corner of my eye. And I even remember my mum, I must have been about 3.5, no more than 4 years old. My mum, I remember her turning around to me and saying, "I'm seeing like dark shadows out the corner of my eye," and I think one of her friends had been round to visit her on an afternoon and had remarked on seeing these dark flashes or dark beings out the corner of her eye. And I was asked, "Have you seen them?" And I kind of looked up and went, "Yeah," but I'd kind of been so used to them and kind of ignored them, and I just didn't realise until that point that there was really anything wrong. And I remember my mum also saying, "Have you been seeing any UFOs?" And at some point as well. And I remember looking up at her and going, you know, what's one of those, you know, because I wouldn't have known what a UFO was, and she basically turned around to me and said, I just have a memory of her saying, do you remember, you know, people coming from like a you know, like some kind of ship in the sky? And I just remember turning around to her and saying, no, you know, no, I don't have any memories of that.
But your mother had.
Well, I remember her saying that she was seeing things in the sky, that she was seeing things in the sky. By this time, as I say, I can't have been any older than about 4 years old, and you know, I have that very, very clear kind of like conscious memory. You know, I've had it.
Was there a time when you did start seeing them more?
I have had some therapy sessions where I was basically regressed to 3.5 years old, and things that I remember as a child, late at night in bed, turned out to be basically UFO abductions. I remember that I used to go to bed a lot as a child, and I would just wake up in the middle of the night and I would be absolutely petrified, really, really scared, and I wasn't really sure what I was scared of, but I knew that I didn't want them to find me.
Now, who's them?
I didn't know at the time who they were, but I just put it down to a child having night terrors, really.
Did you have to have the light on, or?
I always slept with the light off. My mum used to force me to sleep with the light off, really.
And why did she force you to sleep? Because you initially wanted to?
I think she thought she was doing something healthy as a mother. Actually, at the time, I don't think that there was anything else in that. I just think I was having gone through therapy on these memories and having a look at why I felt the need to stay as still as possible in bed so that they wouldn't hear me and they wouldn't find me, and having to even limit my breathing so that they couldn't even hear me breathe, because I didn't want them to find me.
I think there's also enough time to do a little bit of a talk about some of the things that happened in Kingston upon Thames. I moved to Kingston upon Thames when I was 21 years old, and I moved there because I was in love with my boyfriend, my ex-partner, and we were going to settle down and get a house together there, and he was at university there, and I had finished my my training at the Leicester Royal Infirmary in ophthalmology, and thought it would be pretty easy to move down to London, and get a job, whether at Moorlands Eye Hospital or at an optician, or I didn't really think that I would have many problems in finding a job. So I moved down, and we moved into this house in Canbury Gardens in Kingston upon Thames. And this is where even more interesting information about my ex comes in, because we were renting the house off his mother. His mother owned the house that we were in. And I also found out that his family used to own the land that all the houses in Canbury Gardens in Kingston upon Thames were built upon, and that they used to own a lot of the houses that were built, and that they'd sold them off over the years. I only have say-so of my ex on this. I can't say 100% for sure either way. I only know what him and his mother and his father told me. And I don't really see that they have any reason to lie, and they certainly own quite a few properties now, including in Vine in Germany, in Kempton. Kempton's near the Allgäu, in Leinau. They own the house in Kingston, they own another house in Molesworth. I think they own property also up in Yorkshire. So there's no reason for them to lie, because I knew that they were a very wealthy family anyway by this point. I've been seeing my boyfriend for well over a year and a half. We decided we were in love and we were going to move in together. I did find a job, but I didn't end up working in ophthalmology again. I ended up actually working for Waterstones in a bookstore as a trainee book buyer and bookseller. So my job was to basically liaise with publishers, sales reps, and do a lot of quite straightforward market research, basically, for the Kingston upon Thames area, looking at previous trends of what books people like buying and when and where and how, and making sure that we had the Times top test best-selling book list in all the time, and any book reviews or rewards, we always had those books in. And I ran the academic section, so I was responsible for making sure that we had all the books that were on the university book lists in the area and on the sixth form college book lists. It was pretty straightforward work, to be honest, and I was given a budget that was based on previous sales per year on the section that I was in, and so it's just general budgeting and what have you. It was a good job, actually. I loved it. I really, really enjoyed that job. It was I worked with some amazing people, and it was a very, very interesting area of work to be in. I really enjoyed it. The gang stalking started in Kingston upon Thames, actually. It started when I was 22. So I'd been in Kingston for, at that point, roughly about 10 months to a year, no longer than that. And the first gang stalker that I had was a chap with short dark hair who was on a black mountain bike, who drove down the street that I lived on, Chestnut Road, in Kingston upon Thames. And I was walking up the road to go to the local corner shop and also the local deli. We used to have a fabulous deli actually around the corner. I sold some really, really lush little bits and pieces. Some of the best ciabatta was bought from that little deli. Anyway, and to get a newspaper and all the other bits and bobs that I wanted. Probably some cigarettes, because I was a heavy smoker back then as well, and quite a bit of a wine freak. Anyway, on the way up to the shop, this chap cycles by me on his mountain bike, and he really glares at me, giving me the evil eye, and he was like, "Suck my dick, you fucking little bitch." Now, I don't know if I should say this or not really, but the chap who was on that bike looks suspiciously like a particular truther and whistleblower who has come out with his story in the past about being a mind-controlled agent for MI6. Whether it is actually him or not, I don't know. But every time I've seen interviews with this particular person that are posted on YouTube, and I've seen photos of him, my jaw just drops open and says, "Holy shit, you're the bastard on the fucking mountain bike from London who used to give me shit." And not always in a mountain bike, sometimes. I mean, I saw him cycling around Kingston on more than one occasion, and I remember there was one incident where he deliberately blocked me being able to walk down a pathway to the riverside in Kingston, down to the River Thames. And there were other incidents as well where he was driving around in a car with friends. Anyway, those in the know will know who I'm on about. Anyway.
It has transpired that from these memories that that there's a memory basically of an owl being at the bedroom window, and I do remember my mum also saying to me at about the same age that she was, she remembers waking up and seeing an owl, at bizarre times of the night at the bedroom window, just staring at her.
Can you? What type of owl are you talking about? Big eyes? Or?
I think it's just a standard barn owl, just a barn owl, just a normal barn owl. That's what I have in my head. It's just a barn owl. And my mum had a real thing about owls as well at the time. She went absolutely owl crazy for quite a few years, actually, buying loads of ornaments and trinkets of them. But yeah, I just have a memory of this owl at the bedroom window on one occasion, and of it just staring at me.
How big was the owl? How tall was it?
It was about that big, roughly, just about that big. I don't think it was any bigger than that.
It's a very big owl.
Yeah.
Now, are you talking about the whole head of the owl or the whole body? And
The whole body, including the head. Whole body, including the head. And it's just there on outside my window. It's, you know, I'm kind of like here, the window's there, and then there's the owl on the other side. And my bed used to be laid against the window as well as a child. It was laid right up against it.
So basically this was only a few inches away, really?
Yeah, it was literally inches away from me. So,
And was it staring at you?
yeah, it was staring at me. It was staring at me. Again, having gone through therapy, that memory kind of unfolded further, and it appears I was taken out of my bedroom, through the bedroom garden, by.
What do you mean through the bedroom garden?
Through out of my bedroom, through the house garden, and then into the field.
Is this physically or out of body?
This was physically.
And what do you mean by taken?
There are little men that are about that tall, and they're grey, and they're basically holding my hand, and they're taking me towards this great big yellow glowing ship.
So how many greys were there? What age were you?
There's about 6 of them. I'm about 3.5, 3 3/4. This is a memory that I went through with them.
And what happened?
I get taken on board this ship by these beings.
And what did the ship look like?
It's just a great big glowing yellow ball with some kind of typical kind of like what I now think as a typical UFO shape. It's got maybe a bit of a disc around it, but otherwise it's just a great big yellow glowing ball, and it's just there in the field behind the house, and I'm taken inside, and these beings sit inside with me.
What sort of size is it inside?
It's maybe about the size of this room.
Shape? What's it? Tables, chairs?
I don't remember
Things
any.
to sit on?
There were things to sit on. Yeah, there were things to sit on.
And were they just formations in the?
They were just formations that were there. That were just.
Was there anybody else there?
No. It's just these beings. Just these beings.
Okay, 6 took you to there. How many were in?
How many were in?
How many were inside?
That's all of them. That's all of them.
Were they all the same size?
Yes, they were all the same size.
Were they wearing anything?
No.
Can you describe, what their eyes were like, what their heads were like, what their hands were like?
The hands only have four fingers. They're kind of grey. they look like standard greys, I think. They've got the kind of big oval head and the dark eyes.
What about mouth, nose? What were the cheeks?
The cheeks are very. The cheeks just kind of come down to a point, really. They just kind of come down. They're kind of maybe a little bit gaunt looking. It's just a small slit for a mouth. Not much of a nose, really, at all.
What's their skin colour like? Do they have any hair?
No, not as far as I'm aware. Not as far as I don't remember feeling a texture of hair anywhere.
Any veins showing in the arms and the hands, or what's the skin like?
It's kind of, don't know. It doesn't really feel like human skin.
Do they have a smell or an odour? Or?
Yeah, they've got a bit of a whiff. They do
And
have a
what's
bit.
that whiff like?
It's just a bit acrid. I don't know how else to describe it. It's just a little bit acrid.
What would you attach on Earth or in your everyday life to what that smell would be? Like a hospital or disinfectant or something
It's just
aromatic or
oh, no, not aromatic at all.
almondy smell?
No,
Cinnamon? Any?
it's just ever so slightly acrid and a bit rancid smelling. I don't know how else to really describe it, to be honest.
Like something dead? Preserved?
Maybe slight. You know, if a battery's leaked and the smell of battery fluid. from
Sort
a
of
bat-
acidic?
Yes, maybe ever so slightly
Yeah.
acidic kind of smell.
So it's not a huge, overwhelming smell.
It's not overpowering. No, it's not completely overpowering on that memory at all. No, not at all.
So, what did they do? Were they kind, smiling, saying nice things? How do they speak to you? How do they communicate?
They're trying to keep me calm. They're trying to keep me calm and to keep me compliant, basically. And they're getting me to look outside of the spaceship, and I can see through the wall of the craft. And
Are
I
they
can
taken off by then, or what?
Yeah, we're flying over the countryside at this point, and I can see trees and fields and houses.
And is this daytime or night?
This is still nighttime.
So by saying that, is this at a very great height, or?
Yeah, it's at a fairly decent height.
And where do they take you?
They take me to a military base somewhere in the east of England.
Now, why do you know it's the east of England?
I just every time I have that memory, I just know we're going east. We're just going over east. So whether it's Norfolk or Suffolk, I couldn't say.
Bentwaters, Rendlesham? Is there any way you can identify anything at the base? Did you see anything of it?
I do remember there were hangars there. I do remember.
What type of hangars?
They've got
How many?
how many? I get the impression there's two hangars in particular that are quite distinct that I can make out. There may have been a third tucked around the corner, but there's two main hangars that I can see, and I remember at that time they had corrugated metal sides. You know, the corrugated metal that kind of
Yeah,
and a corrugated metal kind of domed arched roof and big doors, and
you were taken there at night.
yeah, it's night time.
So were there any lights? Anything else?
There's a truck, some kind of army vehicle that's on a runway there, that's not far from this craft. And
What type of truck is U.S. military? Any markings?
it's just a standard green
Is it a
truck.
sort of a Bedford type standard British Army issue? one?
Yeah.
So it's a British type truck.
Yeah.
Were you taken into the truck, or how did the vehicle land? Did the vehicle go into the hangars?
The craft.
Yeah.
At that stage in my memory, all I can see is that it's landed on the left hand side of the runway, and then on the right hand side of this runway, there's the green army vehicle with a man there with a flat cap hat and uniform on, and he's got a moustache. He's got a dark black moustache, and
What complexion did he have? Any?
pale, white Caucasian, brown eyes, and
Was he tall, stocky?
he was about average height.
They should all have a name badge on the front. Can you remember his name?
No.
Does he have any insignia? Anything on him, like studs or marks of a lieutenant or a sergeant or something? Or
Yeah, there's 2 stripes here and here. I think.
was it a blue uniform, a dark blue uniform, or was it green? Khaki.
It's for some reason I think I get the impression it's green looking. It's a green looking uniform.
So it would be an army guy
Yeah.
as opposed to RAF or Navy.
Yeah.
So how did he speak?
He just has a very
What was the method of you being handed over to him?
He just spoke in a very plain Middle English accent, and the Greys kind of hand me over to him and some other military personnel.
What shape of eyes did the Greys have?
Again, just the same black almond-shaped eyes.
And were they wearing any kind of clothing?
No, not in that memory. No, there's no clothing.
So what did the military
associated.
guy do? Were there any other people there? And what age are you at this time again?
And in this particular memory that I went through with a therapist, I'm 3.5 years old. Exactly 3.5 years old. And as I'm handed over to these military men, they handle me a bit roughly, and I stumble and I fall. And as I fall, I hit my head on the side of the truck. And one of the alien beings turns around and says, "Be careful with her, be careful with her. You don't want to damage her. You know, you don't want her to damage her brain." And they really scold these military men, these military personnel. And they're basically told to look after me better.
So do you think there was some more? They had more authority over the soldiers. How many soldiers were there by this time?
There can't have been any more than 4 or 5 soldiers there at the time. The main one that I remember is the guy with the moustache. The others are kind of vague, really, but the guy with the moustache and the flat cap, he's the one that I remember.
Okay, so where do they take you?
They take me underground. They take me underground.
How do you know it's underground? You go down a tunnel?
There's some kind of steps that we go down. There's a...
How far down?
I don't know how far down. I couldn't tell you in metres or anything how far down it is.
Was it a long way down, or just a short few steps?
It was quite a way down. It wasn't just a short few steps. It was quite a way down.
Who did you meet when you were there?
There's another man with a moustache and glasses and short dark hair that's swept over to one side, who's wearing...
What kind of style of hair do you think that is? What do you think the hair represents?
I haven't thought about that, to be honest. I couldn't tell you anything about what I think the hair represents.
Your hairstyles can identify a country.
I don't know.
Was he English?
I don't think he was, no.
Why do you not think so?
I just get the impression he's possibly German. In fact, yeah,
Right.
I'm pretty sure he's German.
So
This
how old is the guy?
He's about 30. For some reason or another, I know he's 32 in that memory. I don't know how I know
And
he's 32.
where did he take you, and what did they do?
They take me into a small observatory room, and they're making some notes. It's something to do with some adjustments that they have to do for some reason.
What kind of adjustments?
To do with my brain.
And how did they intend to do that? What did they do?
I remember sitting in a metal chair, and
Was it what kind of metal chair? Was it something you'd sit at the canteen in, or
yeah, it kind of.
or a dentist's chair?
No, it's not a dentist chair. It's
Not
nothing
that
like
kind of
that.
thing.
No, it's just a box standard kind of plain
Tubular metal type chair.
Yeah, it's nothing like
Stackable types, you see it.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah, that sort of thing. It's nothing particularly special. It's not high tech or anything. But
What else was in the room? What kind of observation of stuff?
There's some kind of table that's in the room. There's some kind of what you would call a one-way mirror that's in the room.
How did you know it was one way?
You can see your reflection, and I can see the reflection of the people as they're walking around the room in that.
In the room behind it?
No, just in the mirror. But I mean, as an adult, you've seen these things on TV and what have you, and so you I recognise it in the memory from that. I don't know if I knew it was that as a child, but as an adult going over the memory, that's what I would say.
So you're surmising that then?
Yeah. I mean, there's this mirror on the wall in the room anyway, and it's got a big frame around it.
So
It's
were
got a
you
slight
able to
blue
see
tint.
blue tint? So you weren't able to see through the mirror by any chance?
No.
Because of extra light on their side or your side?
No. I do remember there was some artificial lighting in the room.
What do you mean artificial? I mean fluorescent lights?
Yeah, like fluorescent lighting.
But what's so remarkable about fluorescent lights that you remember that?
It was just a really weird, eerie feeling in the place, and that just kind of added to it. The kind of like the glow of the lighting. Really, it was just a weird.
So the different colour to the light. The light had some kind of a different level.
It was just I don't know.
Why does the light stick in your memory?
I don't know. The light just somehow does.
Was it very bright?
It was very yellowy. I just remember it feels yellow. The light, the quality of the light in the room feels slightly yellow.
Hungary. When the solar eclipse alignment came across Europe, me and my partner went to Hungary to a festival called the Solips Festival that was in a really, really beautiful valley of outstanding natural beauty. It really was a gorgeous place to have a festival of dance, goa, trance and drum and bass music. The festival was for 3 days. It attracted all your local hippie, drugged out stoners from across Europe. So it was, it was a little bit more special in that way than going to Glastonbury or Reading, because there were just so many different people there, and they were all there for the eclipse. And we got a much better view in Hungary than the people down in the south of England did. There were no clouds covering it. We actually got some really good photographs of the eclipse. It was really beautiful. It was a lovely experience. And whilst at the Solips Festival, my partner had the good foresight to go on the internet and order from Amsterdam some Mexican magic mushrooms that were being sold as a sleeping aid in a little kind of like cushion thing that you're supposed to put under your pillow, and then whilst you went to sleep you would have ever such wonderful dreams. I wonder why. Anyway, we knew what these mushrooms were, and they were pre-dried. And we of course, we bought them as a sleeping aid. And we managed to get through the border without being caught with any, and I mean any weed. I mean, how the hell we got through the border into Hungary without them finding anything, I have no idea. Anyway, we had ways and means, which I'm not going to discuss here. So we got through with copious quantities of LSD, these mushrooms, and a shitload of weed from Germany over into Hungary. And we decided to make tea, as you do, out of these mushrooms on the night before the eclipse, on the eve of the eclipse. And we sat there with a campfire and a great big pot over the top, and we made this tea. We boiled it all up. It was like a soup. It was really, really disgusting. It was foul. It was bitter. It was shit. actually. As is always with mushroom tea or stew, it gave my stomach quite a bit of a churn until all the nice bits started kicking in. I remember basically just boundaries between things blurred. I remember being by the campfire and everybody was putting their feet up to the campfire, and I remember not being able to distinguish where people's feet ended and the fire began. And I've had some really, really trippy experiences of mushrooms and LSD over the years, but these mushrooms were pretty intense, actually. And I remember the energies and everything that I was sensing and feeling was just so intense at one point that I really had to go and lie down in the tent. And so I went and I lied down in the tent, and I think I built a spliff, which made it worse. It just made the effects of the mushrooms even more intense, actually. I remember lying on my back in the tent, just kind of like, oh, God, what the fuck am I doing? Right, I've got to pull myself together, I've got to pull myself together, I've got to pull myself together. Come on, Stoner, you can do it, you can do it, you can do it. And every time I closed my eyes, I would just see a great big swirling vortex of multicoloured energies. That's the only way I can describe it. There was just a massive vortex of whirling energies. Now, I assume that must be my aura or whatever the fuck was going on around me, but basically it was just a massive vortex of multicoloured energies swirling around me every time I closed my eyes. And I could feel myself whenever I laid down on my back and closed my eyes. I knew I was leaving my body and going somewhere. And then I'd get scared and open my eyes and be like, no, I don't want to go there, I don't want to go there. I could literally feel myself being pulled somewhere and I didn't want to go. And so I just open my eyes and kind of bring myself back into my body and make a cup of tea and have a cigarette. And I can't remember what else happened, actually, that evening. I actually can't remember a fucking thing. I do know that I met alien beings. And I do know that there was a UFO that went over the camp. I know that there was thunder and lightning that night, but it wasn't normal thunder and lightning. It was something to do with the energies of the eclipse and the energies of this UFO that went over the camp. The only other thing that I know is that the alien beings from this UFO told me in no uncertain terms not to take Mexican magic mushrooms again unless I gave them the proper respect that they deserved. They actually gave me a ticking off and said that these are considered a very, very powerful medicine tool, and that I hadn't respected these mushrooms, and that if I were to take them again, I should take them with the proper respect they deserve, or not at all. And they said, you know, you're lucky because you've disrespected these mushrooms and you've disrespected the medicine of the thing. I really was given quite a lecture, quite a telling off by these aliens, I can tell you that. That's all I remember. I remember that I went through some kind of little wormhole or vortex. I ended up being given a right telling off by these alien entities who flew over the camp to do with these Mexican magic mushrooms. They really were basically trying to look after me. So I'm quite grateful, actually, because they had a fair point. You know, they're considered a sacred shamanic tool. We bought them from Amsterdam and turned them into a soupy stew and didn't really know what we were doing with them. We didn't do any proper rituals or rites with them or anything to get ourselves into a particular frame of mind before taking them. We just thought, hey, let's get battered. It was a bit of a naive and stupid thing to do, really, because they were very, very powerful. And then basically these alien entities said, if you need to be on a spiritual path, now is the time for your answer. And then I remember being woken up at some point. There was some kind of thunderclap or noise. I take it was the UFO just scooting off. And then I found myself awake inside my partner's arms. I was inside the tent and he had his arms around me and everything was hunky-dory, basically.
So what kind of other instruments were in the room? Can you identify? I mean, scientific, medical instruments, electronic things, computers?
There's no computers per se in that particular room. No.
Bearing in mind you're 6 you know, you're very young, so,
Yeah.
so what kind of, can you remember what kind of instruments were there? What were you there for other than just to simply walk into the room? What was happening to you?
I know that they do some routine tests. They shine a light into my eyes, which I take it would be pupil reflex. They take my blood pressure, amongst other things, and the next thing that I know is that I'm sat on this chair and I have these two alien beings in front of me, and I'm asked to open my mouth really, really wide, just kind of like go, ah, you know, like you would if you went to a doctor and they kind of put a thing in on your tongue to see if your glands are swollen, if you're ill, and little like that. And then the next thing I know, there's kind of like two tubes that go into my mouth, one on either side of my mouth, and they go round the back, and they somehow go up through the back of the roof of my mouth and up into my head somehow. And and I just remember being really, really shocked and stunned, just kind of like with my mouth
How were
wide.
the tubes inserted?
They just kind of, the grey just kind of comes up and he places them there, and they just kind of go shh, and then go straight up. That's the only way I can describe it. It's just, it's like...
So the grey is doing this?
Yeah, it's the grey alien that's doing that.
Is it a different grey to the ones that delivered you?
Yeah, it's slightly blue-toned. It's slightly blue-toned.
Taller? What sort of eyes?
It's a little,
what sort of brain?
It's a little bit taller. Very similar shaped head.
Different hands?
I think it's still 4 digits. Pretty sure it's still 4.
Suckers, little things at the end of the fingers? Any details?
I can't remember any suckers on the ends of the fingers, no. I can't remember that.
What did they say to you when they came up to you? Did they say anything? What were they looking like? What was that feeling? What was the expression?
They just had a job to do and they had to get on with it. That's the only...
Where did they take the instruments from in the room to do this with you?
There's some kind of table with some instruments on like a small silver trolley over on the other side of the room.
So there were 2 greys, both the same, but different to the previous 6 greys.
Yeah, they're more blue tone skin.
And did they liaise with the other scientists or other people in the room?
Yes, they are.
And what did they say? How do they talk? How do they communicate? Can you get any idea? Can you pick anything up they said?
Basically, they just want to get on with doing the job that they want to do. There's a general in the room.
Now what's the general doing? Is he, what sort of glasses? What's he like?
He's got very kind of thin framed gold glasses on. He's quite he's quite he's quite a large gentleman.
You mean he's fat?
He's got a good middle-aged spread, yeah. He's got
Is he
a good
tall?
He's quite tall, yeah.
Is he anything like the gentleman that you mentioned on the phone?
Yes.
He's
Yeah.
the same guy?
Yeah, he's the same guy. And he is American. He is American. And he has a different coloured uniform on as well. He's got grey trousers, he's got white shirt. He has 2 gold stars and some kind of white stripe going across here. And again, he's got the flat cap on. And he always has these very distinct gold-rimmed glasses. And
does he have a name, a commander, general?
The only name I can remember is Schwartz.
And whose name is that on?
That's his badge name. That's his badge name.
Now that was the time that was a memory that you described on the phone. Could you go over that now with the children? When you woke up after Duncan O'Finian's partner said something on the internet.
Yeah. I watched the recent interviews with Duncan
We're talking
O'Finian
December
and
2011 here. Okay.
Yeah. I watched the recent interviews with Duncan O'Finian and his partner. And
What's her name?
her name's Miriam, isn't it?
I don't know. For the sake of this recording.
For the sake of this recording, if I got that wrong, I really do apologise, but I remember her name as Miriam. But it triggered a lot of memories, basically, in me, just listening to her talk of this same general being in a large room with parquet flooring, and the walls are painted a slightly kind of mustardy yellow. They're a bit it's a bit of a mucky mustardy yellow colour, and there's two large windows in front of you as you walk through, and they're kind of the old-fashioned metal frame that you got, but it's painted white.
Did the windows have a full pane of glass, or are they separated into squares?
It's separate. There's two.
A little bit like the squares in this room, for instance.
Not quite like those squares. There's two big main rectangle plates, and then there's three smaller plates at the top, and the centre one's open. And that's what.
What's it? Is this daylight coming through?
Yeah, it's daylight.
And how did you get there? How did you join the other children? What's going on?
That part of the memory I haven't recovered yet. I haven't gone through that part of the memory. So I'm not exactly sure how I got there at all. But there's lots of other children in the room, and they're all playing, basically. They're all
And
at
who
play.
else is in the room? You mentioned shadow people.
Yeah, but before the shadow people turn up, there's just people there with clipboards making notes about the children, all at play. And then the general walks in, and one of the men with a clipboard walks over to him and comments about the progress of some of the children, and the general looks quite pleased. And then I have memories of shadow beings coming into the room, and they come into the room a little bit like smoke. They move like smoke would move. And one of them even goes into like a whirl, like a small whirlwind in the middle of the room before forming into humanoid kind of form.
So they're using the human form purely as a convenience?
Possibly.
And what happens when they stare at you? You mentioned their eyes.
Yeah, their eyes can go from kind of like a really kind of luminous white to a blue, and when they're really angry, their eyes go red, and they've got a bit of a gravelly voice. It's not.
Is it like an electronic machine voice, or
no? It's just got a gravelly.
Like a guy that smoked and a lot of whiskey for 1,000 years.
Maybe a little bit like that, yeah.
A bit gravelly like that.
Yeah, maybe a
and
little.
What would they say when? What's the tone? How would they?
They are there to instruct the children and to teach them various methods of ability. To get the
what kind of ability? You mentioned some kind of dancing ceremony with intention.
The dancing ceremony is slightly separate to that. The first thing that the Greys seem to be doing is to terrifying some of the children, deliberately terrifying them, getting them really, really scared, to basically provoke the children into a fight or flight response, to react into some kind of psychic ability as a way of defence against them. And as soon as the children display some kind of psychic defence, then basically the shadow beings go, well done, and then they leave the child alone. But that's basically what, at that particular point, what their job was. They're just kind of trying to instruct the children. I do have vague memories of myself and some of the other children being able to levitate, being able to float around the room. Now, I can't hand on heart say 100% that it is purely levitation. I need to go back through these memories. But I do know that we were floating and we were going around the room, and the shadow beings were really kind of quite impressed with that.
How many of them were there?
The shadow beings. There's 5 of these shadow beings.
Were they all of the same height, status? Did they have anything to distinguish between themselves?
No, not at all. Not at all. One of them was definitely more in charge than the others. I would say. One of them definitely had a tone of authority more than the
And
others.
how many
but the other
humans were there?
There's about 8 human beings in the room.
And were they all male?
No,
Civilian?
some of them are female. They're not all military. Well, they don't all appear to be military. Some of them appear to be what military people would call more civvy street. They're just
Were they
dressed
medical
in.
staff, do you think? Were they medical staff or
They could well have been, yeah. They could well have been, but they're just
holding
dressed in
clipboards?
holding clipboards, and they're just wearing very
Pens.
smart clothes, like office wear, like a suit. Or
And how
a
many children were there? Were they all male or female?
It's a mixture of male and female.
What age?
About 5 years old.
You said just before we close on this section that one of the children was taken.
One of the
children was taken away.
one of the children doesn't do so well at his play, at what he was tasked and set to do. He doesn't do as well as he should do, or as well as some of the other children. And 2 of the military personnel get this little boy, and they pick him up. One grabs him by one arm and the other grabs him by the other, and they take him out the room and down the corridor, and they're going to take him to another room to punish him. And automatically me and all the other children know exactly what's going to happen to him.
What's going to happen?
He basically ends up being raped in a room down the corridor.
By who?
By one of the men. And me and all the other children are trying to send him compassion. We're empathising with what he's going through.
Is this because you were all raped in the past?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that at one time or another all of us have been raped. Yeah, definitely. And we're all trying to send him compassion and empathy, and we're really feeling for what he's going through, and we're told to stop by all the personnel that are there, by the shadow entities, and also by the human beings. We're told to stop sending this little boy compassion and empathy.
How are you told?
The shadow beings just growl at us and tell us not to. And then the next thing I know is there's a woman. She's got a flowery skirt on and a white blouse. Some kind of she's just got like normal plain, I think they're blue court shoes on, and tights, and she's throwing me poison arrows. She's literally psychically attacking me to stop me from having compassion and empathy for this little boy that's being raped down the corridor.
Well, we have to close at this moment. We'll continue in part 2.
Okay. I wanted to talk today a little bit about something which has been a regular occurrence actually as part of the shadow people and the gang stalking phenomena that I get. I have recently been in communication with some researchers from a particular group called Amash. I've been in contact with these people roughly since about April, May of this year, 2011. It's now December. And during the time that I have been in contact with these researchers, whenever it appears that I might start to be a little bit of a bad girl in somebody's eyes, basically I find myself ever more vigilantly remote viewed, amongst other things, and even people trying to affect me on the lower astral in some way. Aside from that, one of the things that I have had, and on more than one occasion now, where I have gone to catch the bus into town to go and do some shopping and just do normal things. And I've had a man who has a very, very strange aura who will always sit next door to me on the bus. It's not always the same man, it can be a different man. And they always sit next door to me on the bus, and they're very forceful and very insistent that they want to sit next door to me. And if I allow them to sit next door to me, these men always throw their aura over mine. And the next thing that I know, I get all this dark energy that's poured over me and on and around my aura, and they're literally trying to break into my aura and pour in this dark energy. And I've had this happen on more than one occasion. I'm pretty sure that these are people who have been easily mind controlled in one way or another, possibly through the use of drugs, or some other way. The other thing that I think is going on with these people is, apart from some obvious form of mind control, is I think that they get possessed by shadow people or shadow beings. And that these shadow beings just hop on and in and out of people. Well, it's almost a bit like the Matrix. If you can remember Agent Smith. And Agent Smith could basically hop inside anyone he wanted at any particular point in place and time as an agent to kind of apprehend somebody. It's almost like that. And it's always when I've tried to get in contact with researchers or therapists or anybody that can help investigate me and my life and my case and what's happening to me. It's always when that's happening. Or at the moment I'm in talks with a researcher about potentially doing an interview and basically telling everything about my life and what's happened to me. And I think that that's the reason why they're doing this. I also, alongside this man on the bus, I did actually receive visits from shadow people who came, they broke into the house, and they basically stood there and they said, if you don't say anything, we'll leave you alone. But if you insist on continuing talking with people about what's happening, then you will suffer and you will die. This isn't the first time that I've had threats from shadow people. I've been receiving threats from them since childhood. These beings are... They can move around like smoke, like air. They generally tend to have white to blue eyes, although if they're really angry, their eyes will turn red. They move around like smoke, but it's not. It's something else, I don't know, but they always stand in human form. It's a humanoid form, but they move around like smoke. They can growl, and if they growl, they do bear some kind of like sharp, pointed teeth. They have a slightly growly voice. It's not really human sounding, it's ever so slightly gravelly. My reaction to them was, how can I not speak about something which I've already spoken about, which is true. And they saw my logic in that, and they saw that they'd been caught on that, but basically they then basically turned around and said, well, what about talking in the future? There's no way that I'm going to stop telling people. There's no way that I'm not going to give an interview. There's no way that that's not going to happen. This has to happen, one way or another. I've got nothing to lose. They've wrecked my life. They've stopped me from fulfilling my career and from finishing my higher education. They've even stopped me from doing voluntary work in my local community. They've stopped me from having real relationships with my friends and family, because my friends and family are now involved in the gang stalking. And I literally don't have anything to lose. So, you know, I either carry on with the status quo, where they're in control, or I basically carry on telling people about what's happening to me, about the abductions and the ritual abuse and the mind control. And that's how I feel about it. But I just thought that in regards to having these attacks by random men, and it's always men who are members of the public, and it's never the same person, I thought it was worth mentioning, really. Somebody might find that useful. I'm wondering if anybody else has had similar experiences. I'm sure there's somebody out there who has. I'm also getting a lot of attacks by invisible beings at the minute, who, with the naked eye, I can't see. If I try and turn on my third eye, I do get a sense that there are still shadow beings around. I'm also being astrally spied upon by reptilians every so often, and certainly by human beings who are NSA or dark witches who are working with the NSA. At points I do feel like I'm in danger, but then I've been in danger for so long and received no help, and clung on to my life by the skin of my teeth sometimes, that, to be honest, I don't really give a shit. A part of me would really, really love to find somewhere safe to live, where I can have some respite away from all this madness, and where I'm surrounded by people who believe me, who give me love and light and the social and spiritual support that I need. But I'm not hopeful, to be honest. I'm so used to struggling through this on my own now. I don't know if you heard that, but that was another crack in the room. Another being wanting me to know that it's here. I definitely am going to go ahead with this interview with Miles Johnston. And I'm not going to let them stop me, basically. I'm pissed off with this now. So, but anyway, I thought the shadow being thing, and taking random members of the public over was a worthy mentioning. And in terms of how somebody might actually be a host for these beings, one of the things that I do know from personal experience is that a weakened aura in any particular state can affect it. So anybody who's a drug addict, anybody who smokes or drinks heavily, anybody who's got a weakened immune system for whatever reason because they're on a poor diet could potentially, for whatever reason, be subject to these beings. But I've got a feeling that there's definitely, obviously, some other form of mind control or what have you going on with certain members of the public. Maybe, I think maybe some people are more susceptible to it than others through genetics as well. But I know that the light beings that are trying to help me have basically said, when it comes to any form of entity possession, you need to look at how and why that person's had that entity attached to them. 9 times out of 10, it's down to something like drugs. And the area of town that this man got onto the bus is an area of Leicester, the West End, Narborough Road, that is very, very, very well known for drugs and very, very well known for brothels. I live just outside of that area, in the nice area, where there's lots of pretty little nature reserves and things right on the edge of the city suburbs. But my bus has to go through this area of Narborough Road, and that's where this man got on. So I'm taking it that he's a man from that area that probably is involved in that sort of thing. But I hope somebody finds this useful. I'll stop waffling.
So you're with the children in the room?
Yeah, in the
Army base?
No, it's not an army base on this particular memory. It's a very large, big, white room. It's some kind of large Georgian building. There's very big Georgian style windows. It's very tall ceiling. There's wooden flooring, parquet again. There's long drapes.
What were the colour of the drapes?
They're I think they're just like maroon red drapes that come down.
Yeah.
And there's quite a few children in the room.
How many? 10? 15?
There's more than 10. There's got to be at least 20 between at least 20.
Were they all of the same race? Were they all? Were there any differences between the children?
The only difference was
Were they all English, in other words?
they're all English. Every single one of them is English. I don't remember any Asian or black children. They were all white.
Any redheads, all blonde, black-haired? Any distinction?
There's dark-haired. There's a couple of blonde-haired children.
So there's no particularly predominant feature amongst the children?
No. Again, we're all about 5 to 6 years old. Nobody's older than that.
Could you determine whether they're all, for instance, working class, rich kids? Any distinguishing differences between the children in clothing or any kind?
No, because we're all completely naked.
Oh.
We're all completely naked. We're all, just totally starkers. And nobody's got any clothes on. We have little, you know, the Egyptian collar necklaces that come over the breastplate and over the shoulders and over the back. Everybody's wearing those, but otherwise there's no clothing at all. No clothing whatsoever. Just these little beaded collar things that we all wear. And we're all being asked to learn some kind of sequence in a form of a dance. We're taught it in the style of a dance. and there's so many steps that we have to take, like 1, 2, 3, 4, and then raise a hand, and then turn another way, and then 1, 2, 3, 4, and then hands here, and then walk again in another direction, 1, 2, 3, 4, and a different hand gesture. And there's songs that we're having to sing, where there's like rhymes that we're having to sing.
Can you remember the rhymes? Anything particularly?
No. I don't think that we always sung in English. That's as far as I can get. I don't know what it was what we were being asked to sing. I don't know what language it is. But it's,
Can you remember any of those words now? Can you sing a song now?
There's the main word that comes to mind, that I know that there was Sekadush. That's one of the words I know that there's basically just a lot of
Kadosh? Something like that. Kadosh.
yes, it's something like that. It's something like that, and we're being asked to. I remember one of the sequences that we're in is we end up. There's a mixture of boys and girls on both sides, but it basically it's in that kind of shape. It's like a square that has a gap at the top and a gap at the bottom, and we're asked to stand in that formation, and we're asked to basically do all these different rhymes and formations in the room until we end up in that particular shape. That's the main shape that comes to mind. But we were asked to learn to sing through the stomach. That's the only way I can describe feeling it.
I think you use the
Learn to sing through the stomach, but it's a way of holding energy there as well at the same time.
Diaphragm.
Yeah.
Gives you more power to orate.
Yeah.
As opposed to the back of the throat. You get a sore throat.
Yeah, that would make
The throat gives
sense.
the tone, the stomach gives the power
Yeah.
through the breath. So that's a sort of a standard singing technique.
Yeah.
So that you were being trained as a powerful singer.
I think we were being trained to just kind of focus energy and intent as well through the stomach.
Yeah,
whilst
the intention.
the intention thing.
What kind of intent were you being asked to use?
We were. It's like an emotional intent that we were asked to focus and concentrate on. The first thing that comes to mind is the woman with the glasses and the long blonde hair is there, and she's stamping her foot going in, and now you want to sing it as though you really mean it and go like.
Really mean what?
It's just the emotional energy.
What kind of emotion?
Just kind of like fierce, kind of like forceful, kind of like really stamping your authority into the emotion of what you're singing basically and what you're doing. And we're asked to perform various different dance sequences like that.
Can you describe any of the dance sequences, what kind of shapes they would perform?
Yeah, sometimes go around in a circle. Sometimes there's circles, sometimes there's raising of hands, and everybody's raising their hands and pointing them like this towards the centre of the circle whilst they're singing and they're chanting. And basically I can remember it being like an energy, a power, a force that's being raised just by children from doing these particular pieces of work. And when we do well, we're congratulated and we're all kind of, told that we've done well.
How are you congratulated?
And they let us go home without any trouble. If anybody messes up, they're kind of dragged away with a bit more than a clipped ear. There's a man there who occasionally takes a sexual interest in one or more of the children, and which included me, and he he would do things like he would be naked and he would take you to one side because you were special and he really needed to speak to you. And he would be completely naked and he would have an erection. And when you're that age, to see a man like that is quite disturbing. It's
What sort
quite
of age are you looking at?
no more than 5 or 6 years old. I'm not.
What was a man's age?
He must have been in his 40s. He must have been in his 40s. And he's basically trying to groom some of the children there, basically, for whatever purpose. I did have some other memories that of him basically wanting me to learn how to touch him in a special way. And yeah, he was quite abusive and quite aggressive, but he was the one, he would kind of oversee proceedings, what was going on, and maybe give some of the other adults instructions as to ways to kind of teach us to do things better, try to get them to do it like this, try to get them to hold their intent like this, ask them to hold and the way that they sing a particular word in the song or the sequence like this, and he's giving instructions to some of the other adults there as to how to get us to improve our performance as well.
So it was a choir singing for some ceremony. Ultimately, what was this for?
My gut instinct and intuition is that this was some kind of early ritual training for magic ceremony. That's my gut intuition.
The magic ceremony.
Well, magic ceremony or ceremonies, and that there were various different basic routines that we had to learn and to remember. And I just remember, I have flashes of things like the pentagram, a square, a circle, and there's just different shapes and colours that we're associated with, and there are emotions held to these and different songs held to them, and it's basically, it's part of I think it's part of the programming that we were put through, and B, I think it's also to do with being taught very early on some kind of magic ritual practice, just like very like to groom us and train us for that eventually. That's what I think was going on. That's how it feels, the memory.
Okay, well, we'll take a break till next time.
Okay.
And then we'll go over some of the other artwork and
Yeah.
things. And we'll chill out.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
This illustrates we cannot have disclosure without the full exposure of these activities and a full explanation from government as to what are they doing with the children, the shadow beings, the greys, and the US and UK military.